Hey guys, welcome back. It is your favorite Gimp with a Limp, and I'm here with Bismarck, The Last Battle. It's by Compass Games and was designed by Petros Tsourelios. Hope I'm saying that right. Now, obviously, this game, like so many others of its ilk, is about the Bismarck. It's the last struggle of the Bismarck as it's trying to break out into the Atlantic. It's the famous German battleship, and the British went after it. They lost the hood when the attempt of trying to take it out. But in this, you are controlling the Bismarck and the Prince Eugen as you attempt to either take and break out here to the Atlantic or make it down over here to the port down in Brest. But you do start up here in Bergen, which I do believe is Norway. So usually when I do videos like this, review video, I will go over the components, talk about it, and then play a little bit of the game for you. I'm going to do this one just a little bit different. Instead of actually playing it out, I'm going to walk through the example of play that is in the back of the rulebook here, just to kind of help you guys out. That way, not only will you be able to read it here in the rulebook, but you'll be able to see it also in my video. So you can use that to help if you have some issues with it, because this game is not hard. It's not difficult by any means. It's less than 10 pages, including the example of play. So obviously not an in-depth game by any means, but the rules were just a little finicky, just a wee bit. And I had to go over the rules more than once, going over them to try to fully understand exactly what was being said. And I think that's part of it is that the designer's first language probably isn't English, and I don't think that it was perfectly translated over. There's just a few things where you could kind of read it in one of two different directions. For example, the initiative, right, is something that I had noticed, but I will show you guys that as we go on. Let me touch on the components. Obviously, we do have a rule book, which is very small. Like I said, it's about 10 pages total. Everything all put together, 10 pages. We do have a single player aid here that is front and back. It has the battle phase. You're going to be using this a lot as you play the game. And then over here, this kind of walks you through the battle phase as well. Attack dice, attack procedure, and then the escape afterwards, because the Bismarck has to try to escape. Besides those two things, we do have a lovely, lovely, lovely mounted board here. Very nice seeing the mounted board. It is very nice. Small, not a big footprint. We also have our player aid. This is simply single-sided. This is for our control of the Bismarck and the Prince Eugen. You're not going to have this for the British battleships and cruisers and things that you're going to see. This is reminiscent of those solitaire games where you keep track of the damage that happens to your ship or submarine or zeppelin or whatever you're going with. Very similar concept that we have here. You see we've got bridge, hull, main guns, same thing for the Prince Eugen down over here. And each one of these spots can have damage counters applied to them. And you'll simply place that there to designate which areas are damaged. And then if it fills up, obviously it's destroyed. You can lose guns and still keep kicking. But if you lose like all your hull, obviously your ship's going to sink. Speaking of the counters, they are actually really nice for a game like this. These are, I don't know how well I can show this. Try to show you guys on camera, but nice, thick, pre-rounded counters. I mean, they feel really good in the hand. These are those nice, best quality type counters that you're going to see in a run-of-the-mill war game. Excellent components. So definitely great on the counters. And then besides that, we have a selection of different cards that are going to have things like aircraft and ships on them and give us the stats. This is where our opponent faction is going to come from. All the British aircraft, carriers, battleships, battle cruisers, destroyers, all that is going to be located in these cards. The only issue with the cards is the setup is a little unwieldy because it is all divided up by date. So if we look up here at the top, 23rd May, 24, 25, 26, 27. All right. So we got 23 May. We've got 24 May. We've got 25 May. We've got 26 May. We have 27 May. And you're like, oh, Gimpy, you're done. No, sir. We are not done. We have destroyers. And then we also have aircraft. We have a huge selection of cards. And the thing is there's not that many cards. There's, 25, 30 cards total in this, but it's split up over, 7 different decks that you have to keep track of. And these are called your contact decks. So you're going to start with 23, but then anything that you don't encounter in 23 gets folded over into 27 later on. And then the same thing. So by the end, you're going to have everything kind of bunched up together, but you do have to keep separate things like destroyers and aircraft. But I know you're looking at it and going, well, I can't tell the difference. Well, neither can I. So when you are playing this game, you are going to have to make sure that you keep them arranged by date and type and know which one you are drawing, because the ones that have destroyers on them and the ones that have aircraft on them don't have anything on the back to let you know. You'll have a separate aircraft deck to draw for things like carriers. So if the Bismarck and Prince Eugen run into a carrier, you will draw from this deck. You need to make sure that you do have them organized to understand which deck you're drawing from. That way you don't draw for a carrier and then go to get its aircraft and end up drawing destroyers or accidentally drawing from the later on portion of the contact deck. So make sure you arrange them by date very specifically, and you should be fine. And I get they can't have anything on the back of these cards to designate them as destroyers or as aircraft because they are all mixed up. Besides just the destroyers and aircraft carriers that I've already mentioned, there are also things like event cards that get mixed into a couple of these decks as well. With the large variety of cards, there simply is no way to put something on the back to help you designate them. So you're just going to have to, keep that one in the noggin as you are playing your game. All right, so just to pull out a card real quick, just to let you guys see what the cards are going to look like. This is the King George Battleship. You can tell it's got BB up there in the corner. It does let you know in the rule book, but it's the basic designation: CA for cruiser, BB for battleship, CV for carrier. If you don't know this, it's something that's very easy to look up. You'll have the name, a little image, a little flag. Up in the upper right, that's its damage counter. So basically that's its health, right? How many points of damage it can take. Once this number is half or under, you do have to flip the counter. It does get a reduced firepower and reduced speed, and that's going to apply for all the different British ships that you are going to see in the game. And then they have a victory point value as well. Down in the bottom left, we see the date. That is how you're going to be able to divide these up by date. But above that is going to be the weapons that they have. So we see for this BB, it has 4 main guns. That means when it is firing at you, you're going to have 4 dice that you're rolling for it. Some ships will have a torpedo underneath that. There are colored dice for the torpedoes as well, and they operate obviously differently than the main guns, can cause different types of damage. So basically you're going to roll a die for each weapon that the ship has, but you get to do the same for your own, as you do have 4 main guns on the Bismarck and 4 main guns on the Prince Eugen, but the Prince Eugen has torpedoes as well. Speaking of which, there is flak, so you can fire at enemy aircraft, but it's only 2. So both the Bismarck and the Prince Eugen get to roll a couple of dice when they are attacking enemy aircraft. Some ships will have this bonus symbol, and this is something that threw me off at first, because the bonuses kept getting referenced, but it wasn't really fleshed out in the rules that well. I'm like, what's going on here? And there is a section right here at the front of the rule book where it explains it, but it's in italics. And this is something that's on me, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who does this. But italics tends to be, just a designer's blurb or something like that. So usually when I'm reading a rule book, I skip over stuff like that. I shouldn't always do that. And this time it did burn me. And this time it did burn me, as this explains how these medals work, because when I was looking at the medals, I couldn't understand them. I'm like, do I get to choose? Because some of them add damage, some of them allow you to do plus or minus damage. What's going on with it? Basically, the medals, anytime you acquire those, which will be from either enemy ships that you sink or moving across certain parts of the board, like these little spots here, you do get to randomly draw one of these bonus counters that you can use during your game to get some type of bonus. So you randomly draw one, and it can add damage or reduce damage or help you take out an enemy ship, stuff like that. So basically one-offs that you get. All right, so as we're looking at the board here, you see it's got everything that you need on the board for the most part, with the exception of the one player aid that you will pull out for battle. Now, I like this. It helps. I love it when a game like this has stuff like this on it. So the sequence of plays all over here to the left, and then we've got combat stuff down over here. So you're not constantly having to pull yourself out of the game. You can get most of the information that you need right here from the board. Okay, that's good. Up here, we've got our weather track. So calm, rough, or storm, that will affect certain things like modifiers, or if aircraft or the like can get airborne. You will roll to determine what's going on with that. So let's go ahead and walk through their example play so I can show you guys everything that I'm talking about here. And just an FYI, before we start, you do notice that these ports here have the outline around the hexes. That does designate a certain modifier in combat. So basically, the Germans get a bonus if any contacts are made in these hexes here. So good stuff for the Germans. All right, so when you're playing the game, you're going to start with 23rd May. Your 23rd May deck, all right, that's going to be your first contact, which should only have something like 4 cards in. I think it's a couple of aircraft and a couple of ships are in here. You are going to have your turn marker set to AM. There is a AM and a PM side. So basically think of this as your amount of turns for the game, but it's times 2, because you're going to do day and then night as well. So we start off. We're in our patrol phase. We got to roll for weather. According to the example play, it's like, okay, we roll, we get a 2. That means the weather result is going to be calm. So you'll take the calm marker, put it there in weather. So you remember, boom, calm, which does affect combat. It gives a bonus to firing your main guns if it's calm seas. So something interesting about this game is when we get done with the weather, we go into the movement phase, okay? But it's not just guaranteed movement. If we look here, you have to roll a d6, and the d6 is going to determine whether or not you're going to move or whether or not you're going to have a contact. Contact means you're drawing from your contact deck, okay? So don't just move the Bismarck along the board. You're not going to do that. You're going to roll each time to see if you're moving or if you're contacting the enemy. But it's not just that. If you contact the enemy, then you got to go into the detection phase to see if the enemy has found you. So there's a lot of cat and mouse going on here. Our example play says that for the first that there is another roll of a 2. So they move 2 hexes over into A11. The Bismarck and the Prince Eugen have a movement factor of 2. Starting off, they can be damaged or slowed down based on certain conditions that can slow them down to 1 movement point. But we've got 2 for our movement. So basically, the lower that you roll for the movement phase is the better, because as you go up, 4, 5, and 6 will draw 1, 2, or 3 enemy cards to contact. With this game, it's not just the single one. You can move up to 4 hexes in a single turn, depending on contacts and the like that you have happen. So for our example play, next roll is a 4. Okay, 4 means that we are having a single contact and we are going to draw a single enemy card. So for our example here, we draw a card and it is the Norfolk. This is a cruiser, a British cruiser. It has 3 main guns and torpedoes. Not good for us. So this puts us right into the battle phase. And battle phase is the first thing is detection. So we have to see, All right, well, we've run into something, but do they see us? Have they spotted us? So you're going to roll a d6, and on a 1 to 4, you are detected, and on a 5 to 6, you are not detected. At this point, this is where I was a little confused, because it does talk about that if you are detected, then you have to roll for the highest initiative. And I was thinking of a competing die roll, right? You've seen them in so many other games. You roll, whoever gets the highest wins initiative. That's what I was originally thinking, but it's not like that for this game. So for our example of play, they roll, they get a 4. 1 to 4 is detected, 5 to 6 not detected. So they have detected us. Now at this point, we have to roll for initiative. And it took me a second to figure it out. And that's why I'm going through the example of play with you guys. It's not a competing die roll. You're rolling to compete against this die roll. So this is their initiative roll as well. So as well as it being detected, this is their initiative roll. In our example of play, we roll, we get a 4. The only way that you win initiative is if you get a 5 or a 6. You basically have to beat their die roll. Now, had they rolled lower, let's say they rolled like a 3 or a 2, then you could beat them with a 4. You would have the higher roll and you would get to fire first. But in this case, if you are equal to or under their roll, you're not going to have initiative. You have to beat them. Just beat them. Can't meet it. Have to beat it. All right, so that means that combat's going to go on and they get to attack first. Now, there's a little stipulation in this that for the most part, everything attacks the Bismarck except for cruisers. If it's a cruiser, it attacks the Prince Eugen first. So the Norfolk is going to choose to target the Prince Eugen. And a lot of times you're given the choice. It's player's choice. I saw player's choice. I can't tell you how many times in the rulebook. But with cruisers, it is not player's choice. He's got 3 main guns and 1 torpedo, which means he's going to roll 3 red die and 1 yellow die for the torpedo that he has. All right, so for his roll, in our example of play, they get a 1, 4, 1 for their main guns, and they get a 2 for their torpedo roll. Now, normally when you're looking at your combat results, which remember is here or here on our player aid, actually, let me just go here because there's probably less glare on it. We see a 1 to 2 is a miss. 3 for the main guns causes a fire. That's a fire token that gets placed on either the enemy ship card or your ships, depending on where it happens, or damage results, okay? For the torpedo, it's different. Torpedo, 1 to 4 is going to be a miss, and 5 to 6 is going to be damage. But then you have to roll to see what type of damage happens. And actually, I just realized I need to correct myself because they do not have it here on the combat results. For a torpedo, your damage roll is here on the player aid, directly beneath the torpedo column. But for some reason, it's not on here. I don't get that. This is damage location. This is for your ships, the Bismarck and the Eugen. This is for everything. They really should have had that one on there. Anyway, now we're not done because there is the modifier. And we see down here, calm weather gets a +1. So all of these die get knocked up 1. And this goes up to 5, and this goes up to 3. This changes a little bit, but not too much. 1 and these 2s here are both still misses, so we don't have to worry about those. This 5 becomes 2 damage instead of 1 damage. And this 3, 1 to 4, is still a miss, so we don't have to worry about that. The Norfolk did not do too good on its roll. It simply got 2 damage. Now, this is where you're going to roll to determine where the damage happens to your ships. Remember, we are targeting the Prince Eugen. So we look here, it's a red die. It's going to be main guns. They roll, and our example of play here, they get a 6. A 6 is a hull hit. So we've got 2 damage to the hull of the Prince Eugen. You can fill this up if you want with damage markers, or you can simply use a damage marker and move it up whichever way you want to go, whatever is easier for you. So I'll simply place one there on the 2 marker to designate the fact that the Prince Eugen has taken 2 damage. Now the Norfolk is done. We get to return fire. All right, so we will start with the Prince Eugen firing back at the Norfolk. And in this case, the Prince Eugen has done pretty well. Fires its 4 main guns and torpedoes. It got a 4, 6, 2, and a 3, and then a 6 for the torpedo hit. So that's a definite hit. And we have to bump all of these up by 1 because we get the ComSeas modifier as well. So that becomes a 3, and this becomes a 4, if I can find it on here. So that is our ending die roll. The torpedo was already a 6, so we don't have to bump it up any higher. All right, so I actually just realized I forgot to set up the Norfolk counter for the ship because we did encounter them there. But I'll go ahead and place them there. Now, we have to roll for the damage for the torpedo, and the rest of these are what it is. With the torpedo rolling as a 6, we're getting 4 damage for that. Remember, you are going to have to consult your player aid here to determine that. And then add it all up together, we get a total of 6 damage from our main guns, plus 1 fire, and another 4 from the torpedo. That is a total of 10 damage and a fire. And you see, this is more than half its value, so the Norfolk would get flipped over to its opposite side. It's now slowed down, and it has less armaments to continue the hunt for the Bismarck. So the neat part about the fire being on that Norfolk is for each battle round, it is going to suffer another point of damage on top of whatever else is happening to it. Now, don't forget, our Bismarck gets to fire. And in our example of play here, the Bismarck with just its main guns, because he does not have torpedoes, rolls a 6, 3, 4, and 4. Awesome. They are kicking butt when they are taking on the British here. So adding our plus 1 again for the fair weather, we get a total roll of 6, 4, 5, 5, for a total of a buttload of damage. Let's see, that's 2, 4, 5, and 8 more damage, which is enough to sink the Norfolk. So the Norfolk has been taken out, and we would get to get the victory points. So you want to make sure and hold on to this card so you can tally its points at the end. But we also get to draw one of those bonus counters I was talking about earlier, because the Norfolk does have its bonus marker right there. So at this point, we've done our 2 movements, right? So we've done our movement for this turn. We would flip over to the PM side, and we would continue to do the movement die rolls, moving our ships and adjusting for contacts that we run into along the way. Combat conducted just the same way that I just showed you guys there. At the end, when you do have your turn on the PM, you will flip it back over to AM, and that's when you're going to advance it to the next turn or the next date. And any cards, any aircraft, I actually grabbed the wrong deck. Any cards that you have left in your current contact list are going to get shuffled up and added to the 27th date, right? So you can still run into these cards later on. Just because you didn't run into them now doesn't mean you won't hit them later. You will continue on just as I showed you guys, AM, PM, rolling for weather, doing your movement rolls, seeing for detection and initiative, and your choice is either to go out here to the breakout or to Brest. Now, I counted these up, and I think the shortest route is Brest. It's 13 hexes to get to here, and it is 17 hexes to get to G11 down here for the breakout. But you do have to have 1 movement point farther, so you can't just get here. You have to get here and then move off the board to count that as a win. This gets you the bigger victory. This gets you the quicker victory, but you get the higher victory points here. At first, I was like, why not go for Brest? It's shorter. You can get there a lot quicker. But there is a lot of victory points on the table if you do make it out into the Atlantic. So just to show you guys, you lose points, obviously, if the Bismarck and the Eugen are sunk, but making it to Brest gets you 100. But the Bismarck and the Eugen breaking out to the Atlantic get 100 points per if they can break out into the Atlantic. Of course, unfortunately, the Eugen has to be not damaged for it to count. And you also get victory points for each one of those ships, aircraft, carriers that you do destroy along the way. So the one thing I didn't show you guys so far is there is a repair phase to the turn, and you get a couple of die rolls, two for the Bismarck, one for the Eugen, and depending on what you get to repair so many points of damage. You do have to try to repair fire, so you can use those components. Like, you can't use your guns if they're on fire, obviously, and you need to keep your main guns and everything loaded and working so you can continue to hook and jab, because this game is relatively combat heavy. If you look at it, at least half the time on average you are going to be getting contact every single time you move. Now, they might not always detect you, so you might be able to slip by, you might be able to escape, whatnot, but you are going to be slugging the whole way down as you head to the breakout or as you head over to Brest. So you're going to be taking damage along the way that you're going to have to repair. You will get those bonuses that you can use to help you with the repairs to try to keep your ships up. Obviously, you want to focus on things like your hull and your bridge, so you keep floating and stick in the fight. You can keep fighting if you're down a gun, but can't keep fighting if you're down a hull. Now, something just as FYI that I like to do to kind of make it a little bit easier on myself is to take the ship counters that are going to be in each one of those contact decks, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, as you're going along, and go ahead and place them on top of the deck. That way, when you are pulling down that contact deck, you've already got your ship counters there ready to go. You don't know if you're going to encounter those ships, but you don't have to go digging them out of the box or digging them out of a bag. Got them right there. Like, for example, the 23rd, the only two ships you can run into is the Suffolk and the Norfolk. The other two cards are going to be aircraft cards, so you don't have counters for those. Only thing that I haven't shown you guys so far is there are event cards that can be drawn, and you will just play them out if they are drawn as your contact. These are going to be mixed in with a few of the contact decks. For example, this one, the Bismarck event, it evades naval forces for a while, so the Bismarck gets to move forward a couple of hexes. So a couple of free moves for you. So ultimately, what do I think of the game? I gotta say, I like it for what it is. It's not heavy, it's not deep, it's not anything that's gonna burn your brain as you're going along. This is a solitaire, dice rolly, see what happens type of game. Honestly, you don't have a whole lot of choice in this game. Think of games like American Tank Ace or Silent Victory, the like. Those solitaire games, the more choice that you have, the better the game is. Here, your choices are basically what direction you're going to go in and what you're going to target. All right. Do you take the longer way and try to get some extra bonuses because those can help you in a pinch? Or do you try to go the shorter way and just forego the bonuses? What enemy ship are you going to target? But as to what happens in the game, most of that is going to be happening to you versus you choosing it to happen, because you are going to be randomly drawing for those contacts. You might get an event, you might get aircraft, you might get a carrier, you might get destroyers. You really have no bearing on what's going to pop up in front of you. You can only react towards it, which makes sense for a solitaire game. You want that random factor. You want to not know what you're going to run into. And that does give the credence to the replayability of the game, because no game's going to play exactly the same since you are going to have random draws. But for example, like the 23rd, when you're first starting out, you know what you're going to have happen. For the most part, you're going to encounter one of a couple of ships or one of a couple of different aircraft. Now, there's a fair amount of aircraft in the game, but there's not a huge variety to them. And just to show you guys, you see here, it's all torpedo planes. So 4 torpedoes, 4. I think they've all got 4. And it's just how much damage they can take. This one takes 2. This one takes 4, 6, 4, 4, 6. They're all worth 10 victory points. So the aircraft are relatively similar in how they're going to play. Honestly, that's my only real drawback to the game. And you do run into that with the more simple solitaire playing games, in that there really is only so much choice that they can put into your hands. If you want to have random contacts, then you don't really get to choose your contacts. Yes, I would have liked to have seen more ships be available as potential enemies, but there were only so many British ships, right? They had the Hood, they had the Suffolk, the Norfolk, yeah, they had those ships. So those are the ones that you're going to encounter or potentially encounter anyway. But do I think the amount of gameplay that you get is worth the cost of the game, especially considering the top-notch components? Yeah, I'd say you're pretty well good to go. And come on, they even included a whole extra strip of counters that you don't need just to make sure you had the one right counter that got misprinted. That's decent on their part. They didn't have to do that. They could have just put it out as a PDF so you'd have to print out your own counter. There's only one that was misprinted, but instead they put the little half sheet in there. That way you would have the correct counters. Other than that, I would have liked to have seen the torpedo damage down over here. It would have saved you having to dig up the player aid for it, but it's not a huge deal. It's a minor gripe in the grand scheme of things. But all right, that's going to be it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And by all means, feel free to, walk through my example of play. That way you guys have the ability to see it and read it at the same time. It'll help ease you into the game. All right, that's going to be it for me. Y'all take care. I will catch you in the next one.